Welcome to Global Perspectives. What's it like to spend time in a Syrian prison? Dorothy Parvaz, a journalist with Al Jazeera who specializes in human rights, knows from experience.
Global Perspectives with Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator John Bercia.
Welcome to the show, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me.
So what's it like to be covering an assignment and all of a sudden find yourself in a prison and in Syria?
Well, it's pretty terrifying for a number of reasons. First of all, you're seeing firsthand how these people are treated, the prisoners in there, which is far worse than any treatment that I got. I have to remember and remind anyone who talks to me about it that I walked out of there alive. I wasn't tortured, I wasn't raped, I wasn't killed. But it's really difficult for a reporter to deal with because we're not used to being part of the story or being in the story. I don't do a lot of first-person reporting. So that was very hard for me to negotiate in terms of reporting. But yeah.
So what were your first thoughts? When did you realize you were being taken into custody?
Well, I realized I was being taken into custody pretty early on at the Damascus airport, where the Syrian government had grown very suspicious and paranoid, and they started arresting people on arrival, searching everything. So I knew I was being detained, but I wasn't sure what they were doing with me. And they surely were not in a hurry to inform me as to what was happening to me. So I realized that things were incredibly grim when they crammed me between two armed men in a car with another armed man in the front seat, and we drove to this facility about 20 minutes away from the airport. And I could hear, initially it sounded almost like cheering, but then when we approached, I realized, no, those are people screaming, they're being tortured. And I was taken into an office where I was standing on top of like a big pool of blood, two pools. And I knew that this might not end well at all.
So they didn't make any attempt to conceal what was going on. I mean, you were hearing, seeing to some extent.
Correct. So there was this real haphazard way of doing things over there, in that when they took me in and out of my cell, they would blindfold me and handcuff me. But the blindfolds weren't exactly on properly. I could see a lot. And even if you were blindfolded, you could still hear what was happening, and you saw blood everywhere. So that's the thing that made me think that I was not going to be set free or allowed to leave. Because if you're showing me this, obviously I'm going to leave, and obviously I'm going to report on this. Mm-hmm. So why would you let me leave? I would have seen far less on the streets of Damascus, to be honest. If they just let me go to Damascus, I would have come back with, there are some protests, but I would not have seen what I saw.
So did you fear that something much worse was going to happen to you? You said, fortunately, nothing severe did happen. But
correct. I would say the first night I was there was probably the worst, because they took me out into a courtyard, or it felt like a courtyard judging by the acoustics. And I was blindfolded and handcuffed, and they took me outside and they put me up against the wall, which is, you think you're going to get executed, basically. So I was standing there for, it seemed like an eternity. It was probably no more than 15 minutes. And I could hear two distinct sets of interrogations happening nearby. These young men were being beaten harshly and begging for mercy. And a guy came up to me and just asked me if I was alone. And I was alone, all right. And I really thought they were going to kill me. And the worst part about that, aside from the dying part, really, was that I knew that my family had no idea, would have no idea what happened to me. And I would be just another unmarked grave, basically. And that's a tough thing to sort of wrap your head around when you're in that situation, and you aren't sure if you're going to get out and when you're going to get out.
Were you held by yourself, or did you have cellmates?
I was held in 3 different cells in Syria in those 3 days. And the first cell I was in very briefly I was with another young woman who was crying a lot, and she had a pair of stiletto heels with her. And they told her that she'd been arrested because she was protesting, but nobody wears stiletto heels to a protest. But I was also told when I was put into the cell, don't speak to her, don't tell her anything about yourself. So I wouldn't say anything to these people. I would just say, I'm a tourist, I don't know what's happening. But they would tell me in bits and pieces what was going on with them. but she'd been there for a few days. I left that cell. I went in another cell for a while alone, and that one had a lot of blood on it. So much so that I didn't know where I could lean against a wall. There was just a lot of it. And then I was taken out of that cell for another round of interrogations. This was kind of like this disorienting schedule that I was on. And then the last cell I was in with a young woman. I think she was 19, very young, and she'd been there for at least a week by that point, and was just couldn't stop shaking, crying a lot. The food they served us there was, rotten mostly, and so she would eat because she'd been there for so long. She had to eat, and she kept throwing up. I think about her a lot. I wonder where she is.
And you had to eat the same food, or?
Yeah, but I'd only been there for a few days, so I was still avoiding it as much as I could. So they would give us some dried bread, sometimes moldy, sometimes not. So I would stick to the dried bread. I wouldn't eat the rest of it. I tried eating rice one day, but it had cement in it, so I chose to not touch that again.
Rice with cement doesn't sound very appetizing.
No, like rotten vegetables, things like that.
So at what point did you start to think you might be freed?
From Syria?
Or did it happen suddenly?
From Syria, they initially told me that they were going to send me back to Doha. This is 3 days in. So I went in, I was sort of given this stern lecture by some sort of military general kind of guy. He was wearing a suit, but I was told he was high in the ranks. Lecture on reporting and journalism, and why reporters are destroying Syria and we're causing problems for them and things like that. And then I was taken to the airport, but I wasn't put on a flight to Doha. I was forced onto a flight to Iran, and they sent along with me an Iranian staff member from the embassy in Damascus, along with a dossier, a file of my alleged spying activities. So they sent me to Iran, where the punishment for spying is either a very long prison sentence or death with a fake spying file.
So what was the point of the imprisonment in Iran? Was it still under this umbrella of potential spying, or was it something else?
No, I don't think for a second the Syrians thought I was a spy. They knew I'd gone in as an Iranian citizen. They have a relationship with Iran. They wanted to use me as an object lesson to Al Jazeera. So they shipped me there because they knew they could legally do so. And Iran, because of its relationship with Syria, had to do its due diligence and actually investigate those spying charges, hence the 2 weeks of interrogation.
So how did all of this affect you as a journalist? Because journalists do the counterintuitive thing. They go into crises. They go into disasters, and they don't want to be part of the story, but in this case, you did become part of the story. And how did that affect you as a journalist?
Well, I mean, it affected me in the sense that I don't want to go back to Syria at this point, not because of the dangers, because it was a lot less dangerous 4 years ago and I still didn't want to go back. But I just don't want to be part of the story again, because if I get arrested a second time, if I go missing a second time, then it'll be like, oh, she just went there for this reason, which was never the reason I went in the first place. But in terms of reporting, I don't hold it against anybody who stops going to these places to report these stories. I get it. That just means they have a good survival instinct. But for me, I feel like if reporters stop reporting things in response to threats and intimidation all the time, then they win, and we lose, and democracy loses, and the general population loses, and that to me is just it's an unacceptable outcome. We have to, as much as we can, keep going back and keep reporting.
So did you originally intend to become a reporter as your career, or was that something that just happened?
Well, I mean, I started out when I did some college reporting, but nothing serious, just, small stuff. But I got my first job in journalism at 22 in Japan, in Tokyo. Kind of fell into it. I was interested in it, but I didn't think I had a shot. I didn't think I had a hope in hell. But I fell in love. I knew I was doomed the second I walked into a newsroom because it became immediately clear that I could never work in a bank. That was it. I'd found my tribe, and that was that. So it's been the only career I've had. And I've been very fortunate to have had it for over 20 years now.
What was your assignment in Japan?
So the Asahi Evening News, the afternoon paper at the Asahi Shimbun Company, English language, was looking for an intern. And I just sort of stumbled in there, completely blew my copy editing test. I had no idea what a style guide was, nothing, and destroyed, you know, most of the work that was. But I did answer a couple of questions correctly that sort of made them a little keen on maybe having me around. So I started doing that, and I worked on the international copy desk. I learned the style guide, I did, finally. And so I reported there and did some copy editing on the international desk for a year before I went to graduate school for journalism.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
And did you originally think you would end up in the Middle East eventually, or back to the Middle East?
Sort of, maybe not the way that I did, but I kind of always knew I'd go back. You know, I'm half American. I've lived most of my life outside of Iran, my country of birth. But there's something about it that never leaves you, and it's part of your identity. You kind of always know who you are. You have that perspective. Doesn't mean that I don't understand Americans or that I, you know, don't have an American perspective on some things. But yeah, I kind of always knew I'd go back, or I hoped I'd go back for work. I wish I had more cheerful stories to cover, more life-affirming stories, but you know, the way the situation is with human rights violations. Yeah.
How did you end up with Al Jazeera?
Well, I was freelancing in London and really not enjoying it. I love the newsroom environment. I love that ecosystem. It's very dynamic. I love working with different people and in that environment. And so I was really miserable. And Al Jazeera was hiring and really expanding at a very exciting time. This is before the Arab Spring. But I still thought, what an opportunity to be in this international newsroom, totally untested waters by anybody I know, and just go check it out and see how it goes. And the digital platform also excited me because I'd been in print up until then, and I just really wanted to be on a different platform and play with that for a while, and it's been great.
So what was your first assignment?
My first assignment, like my first deployment, or so I did a lot of in-house writing, but I think my first deployment, Japan, the earthquake and tsunami. You know, a lot of my colleagues were only interested in reporting on issues in the Middle East, but I'd lived in Japan and I'd lived there during the Kobe earthquake. So my editor knew that I knew how to operate around things in Japan when everything was broken and nothing was working. So he just called me up and said, do you want to go? And I said, sure. So I spent 3 weeks in northeastern Japan mostly, covering the earthquake, tsunami, and then the start of the nuclear meltdown.
Do you have a preference for those types of events and developments, or do you like cultural issues or political issues, or do you gravitate toward anything in particular?
I gravitate towards news. Honestly, if you gave me a transportation beat somewhere, I'd be just as excited. I really would be. I like news, if it's newsworthy. I mean, to me, culture and politics and what's happening in these countries, they're all part and parcel of the same thing. And I wrote, I had a different beat for a while when I was in Seattle. I wrote about pop culture and subculture, and that was fun too. Seattle's a great city, and I had a terrific time doing it. So I don't gravitate towards violence and bad things. It just happens that this is the world we're living in now, and this is the assignment that I have.
Talk to us about, you mentioned pop culture. How important is pop culture in the overall evaluation of what's of interest to people? Because it seems that most people are more interested in pop culture than they are in the serious issues of our times.
Well, I think it's just, it has its place in a sense because it's a nice diversion. If everybody just spent all their spare time thinking about refugees and climate change and all these very heavy subjects, their brains would probably explode. Having said that, I think that, personally, I worry about how overly popular it is and how, sometimes you see ratings and more people are watching the finales for like Dancing with the Stars than the presidential debates. I don't know what the numbers are this year, but this has been historically the case, and it's dismaying because one of those things is very consequential and the other not so much.
Is it jarring to go from hard news to pop culture and then back to hard news? Or, like you said, you just feel comfortable in that journalism mode, and so whatever you're covering, it's okay?
Pretty much. I mean, I think at this point, though, I don't know if I could go back to writing about, I don't know, fake fur trends in Seattle. I don't know if I could do that without a significant chill period in between refugee camps. I just got back from Iraqi Kurdistan. I don't know if I could make my brain sort of reorient itself very quickly. I think I'd need a couple of months of transition time. But yeah.
What was your experience like in Iraqi Kurdistan?
Well, I'd never been there before, and it was really fascinating to watch how this population, you know, it's not a huge region. It's like the size of Switzerland, right? That's usually the thing it's compared to the country. And they're dealing with 3.3 million Iraqi IDPs, internally displaced people, 250,000 registered Syrian refugees, an economic crisis, and Daesh or ISIS just over the mountains from them, 50 kilometers away. That's where the front line is from them. And now the operation in Mosul is imminent, and they're expecting another 1.5 million IDPs. But people there just have a tremendous sort of will and resilience and about them. They're tough yet incredibly generous, and that's just part of the culture. That's part of how things have been. They've never really had an entirely peaceful, easy existence in that region, the Kurdish region of Iraq. So I thought it was amazing how they were dealing with it. And one of the things that I was told by one woman who works for an NGO that deals with IDPs was, you know, Europeans have no idea what they're talking about. You know, a few thousand refugees show up at their borders and they panic. Mm-hmm. They have millions. And, you know, you don't hear a lot of anti-IDP sentiment on the news every night.
How much input do you have into the selection of your issues and where you travel to?
I have some. I mean, I can pitch stories. Ultimately, somebody else has to sign off on them. I don't deploy myself. But, you know, I've never had a story forced on me, ever, nor an assignment forced on me. I can push back if I don't like an idea. And I have pretty receptive editors. And when I speak to them, if I make the case for something, you know, they usually allow me to go and do the work. And I'm very grateful for that.
What kind of issue would you not be inclined to take on? You said you haven't had any forced upon you. Were there some that were attempted that you didn't didn't come up?
No, it didn't come up. But I think that I would rail against being forced to take a political perspective on something. So, you know, working on a story on this, but then not interviewing those people and only reporting one side, that kind of thing would set me off. Because that's not journalism. Mm-hmm. But I've never had that happen. Although I've had colleagues in other news outlets who've told me that they've had those experiences. So yeah, but I've never had that. And you know, when it comes to these more dangerous sort of assignments or tense assignments, let's call them, I've also never had anyone tell me I have to go somewhere. It's always geez, you know, there's a story here. Would you like to go? If you can't go, we'll ask somebody else, kind of thing. And there's never a pressure or some sort of ultimatum. You know, I'm pretty free to choose.
Are there some assignments that you're interested in that you have been prevented from pursuing for whatever reason?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you're asking if I have a 100% hit rate with my pitches, no, I don't. I have pitches shot down all the time. But, you know, it's usually an issue of either budgeting or scheduling, or maybe that editor knows that they have another series of stories coming from someone else that deal with the topics. Sure, I've had that happen a lot.
Is the issue ever safety, though?
I almost was not sent to Egypt in 2013 because they were worried about safety. But ultimately, what they did was we had a very good safety plan in place. This is Cairo in 2013 when Morsi was being deposed and everything was falling into chaos. And we made it a short assignment. So it was like 7 or 8 days. And then they kept extending it a couple of days at a time. And I had to check in with security every few hours, sometimes every 20 minutes, depending on what part of town I was going in. So yeah, some safety has become an issue. I've never had an assignment flat out rejected for safety reasons. I try not to pitch anything too insane because I don't see the point of it. A dead reporter doesn't file anything. So what's the point?
Well, other than the prison experiences that you had in Syria and Iran, were there other instances where you felt that you might not come out of it unscathed?
Yeah, the summer of 2013 in Cairo, I was there when Rabaa was cleared on August 14th. I was in Nasser City, and I was basically, from around 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, they started firing. By around 10 o'clock, live rounds through a very thick fog of tear gas. And I was running with the residents through side streets for about 2 hours before I found a mosque. And we hid in there for about 4 hours. And I somehow, with the help of this doctor there, was able to get a ride back to my hotel before it got dark, because I knew if it gets dark, I'm going to be arrested, given what was happening at that point in the city. But I was pretty sure I was going to get shot. I've never had to dive under cars until then. You know, it was crazy, and that's not who I am. I'm not a tough person. But, you know, you do what you got to do.
Have you ever been injured in the course of your work?
No, never,
So
fortunately.
you've been lucky.
Incredibly lucky, yes. Yeah.
So what are some of the issues that are of interest to you now, things that you would like to pursue, things you might pitch?
Things I might pitch. Well, I hope to go to Afghanistan in a couple of weeks to look at how the Obama administration has performed there, what people there think, and maybe ask them what they think about the presidential election, because of course whoever becomes president is going to affect them a lot. I'd love to go back to Mosul, to Iraqi Kurdistan rather, once the operation from Mosul is done, to see how they deal with that, because that is going to be a massive crisis. They're not prepared at all. I mean, I'm not criticizing them and saying that. They just don't have the resources to deal with it. And I'd also like to go to Pakistan, but that's a whole other series of stories.
So you deal with adventure, you deal with crises, you deal with catastrophes, you deal with death. You talked a lot about blood at the beginning of this conversation. How do you separate yourself from all of that at the end of your workday and go to a place where you can sort of recharge and get ready for the next challenge?
You know, you just try to give yourself a couple of days. I don't know if I'm particularly good at that, but I think that having friends you could talk to helps to sort of unpack some of what just happened. Not just colleagues, but friends outside the industry as well. And honestly, running. I would recommend exercise to anybody. I'm not an athletic person, but I learned actually, especially after Egypt, that one must be in some kind of semi-decent physical shape to survive, because if I were a heavy smoker with a bad knee, I probably would have been killed. So yeah, I mean, you just have to give yourself the space to feel something. I wouldn't bury it with heavy drinking or anything like that. You have to give yourself the space to feel it for a couple of days, but not dwell on it.
So journalism clearly is your calling. Is there any other field that you had considered in the past that you might consider after you've finished your journalism career?
Oh God, you're making me sad. I think for a minute in high school I thought about law school, but I'm actually really happy I didn't go. No offense to any lawyers watching. But possibly going into maybe getting a PhD and going into academia or research, looking at sort of the cross-section of human rights and security, because it seems generally when human rights are cracked down upon by governments, it's under the auspices of security, but there has to be a space where both can be respected. And
So you might go into teaching.
maybe, or maybe just research, I'm not sure.
Well, on that note, we've run out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today, Dorothy Parvaz.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you. For Global Perspectives, I'm John Bercia, and we'll see you next time.